Let's bring back Mark Jacobson now. He is the former Deputy NATO Senior Civilian Representative for Afghanistan and the Assistant Dean of Washington Programs at the Maxwell School, also the brother of CTM Weekend anchor Dana Jacobson. Mark, thank you for sticking around. So what have we now learned these troops will be doing exactly to help evacuate people? Will those 3,000 being sent to Afghanistan all be sent to the airport? Or will some be placed elsewhere in the capital? And what will the 1,000 troops going to Qatar be doing?
I'm going to give a very unsatisfying answer. I'm not quite sure after that briefing, but what it appears is that in the next couple of days, about 3,000 troops will head to, they call it H-Kaya, the Hamid Karzai International Airport. There will also be a reserve of a brigade combat team, about 3,500 troops that are going to make their way to Kuwait, as I understand it from Fort Bragg, but that wasn't exactly clear. I think the takeaways are this. One, this is a significant force, and it says to me that the U.S. anticipates a significant security threat. Now, Mr. Kirby wanted to stay away from certain words, evacuation, security, combat. I get that, but what this is, for lack of a better phrase from the administration, this is a non-combatant evacuation operation, a NEO. They may not want to say that, but doctrinally, this is exactly what it is. What that means is get American civilians out of Kabul, out of Afghanistan, and also make sure that you can evacuate embassy personnel who aren't needed. That's exactly what these NEOs are designed to do. It requires airlift, it requires security, and as Kirby said, the situation is deteriorating rapidly enough where the Pentagon believes it needs another 3,500 troops. So if I understand correctly, almost a little over 6,000 troops ready to go in if needed.
We've heard some reporters there compare this to the fall of Saigon. Is that an accurate comparison?
Well, I'm guilty of posting the meme of the helicopter lifting off the roof of the embassy in Saigon in 1975. So I think from a perception standpoint, it is. And even if we don't want it to be, the Taliban are certainly going to make it very clear to the Afghan people in the world that this is, one, a U.S. loss, and secondly, the U.S. abandoning the Afghan people. And I can't really take issue with the latter because regardless of what the State Department continues to say about an enduring partnership with the Afghans, it's really hard to have an enduring partnership when you've left them on the battlefield.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit because earlier State Department spokesperson Ned Price was challenged on that. He said, this is not an abandonment of the Afghani people. We will continue our diplomatic mission there. But in all intents and purposes, for all intents and purposes, is it an abandonment? And also, what is happening to those Afghani individuals who are still waiting on those visas to be processed, all those people who helped American forces in one way or another? Are they going to be part of this evacuation that is happening in the short term, or will they have to remain in Kabul while their visas are processed?
I certainly hope those Afghan individuals are going to be part of those taken out. Now, from what Kirby had said, and he wanted to defer back to the Department of State, it sounds like those who've applied for the special immigrant visa program are going to be airlifted, not necessarily to the United States like the last group that came to Virginia, but possibly to a third country. So that seems to be part of the equation here. And yes, there are recurring U.S. diplomatic efforts. He mentioned Zalmay Khalilzad and engaging with the Taliban. But the Taliban have no incentive for a ceasefire right now. We are doing nothing to bring them to the table. Ned Price, the State Department spokesperson, said, well, if the Taliban can't adhere to international principles, protecting embassies, taking over a government without being elected, then they're not going to get international support. The Taliban don't care about that. And I think it's a little naive, if not disingenuous, to suggest that that's what the U.S. has in its arsenal. The bottom line is unless we start using airstrikes and the threat of continued combat operations to force the Taliban to the table and support the Afghan National Security Forces, you won't see a ceasefire. So bottom line to your question, yes, this is abandoning the Afghan people, and President Biden has pretty much owned that. I'd like to see his people be as clear as the president has been.
Yeah, he has pretty much said that this is now up to the Afghan people. They have to decide what their fate will be. They have to fight for it themselves, is kind of what the president has said about the situation. We just heard Kirby say that this troop deployment will be a very narrow mission. Planned right now to end by August 31st, that troop withdrawal date we've been given before. But is there any chance that President Biden will choose to keep troops in the country a little longer if we do keep some, American personnel in that embassy and if the Taliban continues its push for control?
And this was one of the challenges that Kirby had, and I understand it. That speaks to how rapidly the situation has deteriorated. President Biden's made clear that the United States is out by the end of August. And I think he's going to stand by that. The problem is this force that's going in. And again, there's no reason to disbelieve that this is a narrow mission, an evacuation operation. That's going to make that August 31st deadline difficult. I suspect that the administration may push that back again to that original 9/11 deadline, or again, legitimately say, look, that combat mission is over. The troops are gone. But we do have to bring some Marines or U.S. Army forces in to help evacuate those in the embassy. And I think that's legitimate and accurate and truthful. But I just think it speaks to the lack of planning that was done prior to President Biden's announcement of our withdrawal earlier this year.
It all seems to have unraveled a lot faster than anyone anticipated. Well, Mark Jacobson, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.